What you will find is there's a so people and then you stop and you'll respond. And you have 2 seconds for the conversation. Let's see, just so you know that.
Whoever follows one person.
It's not your own. It's for.
Yeah, so if you were responding, just give it like 2 seconds, or it feels like a weird awkward pause, but we put a lot of.
All right, I think we're about ready to get started. We are filming on YouTube. So welcome everyone to the City Attorney Candidate Forum, which is co-hosted by Ballard District Council and Ballard Alliance. My name is Angie Gerrald, and I'm the Vice President of Ballard District Council. We begin with a land acknowledgement. We respectfully acknowledge that the greater Ballard area is on the ancestral lands of the Coast Salish people. We honor with gratitude these lands and waters which have been cared for by the Duwamish, Suquamish, and Muckleshoot people, past and present. We'd like to thank Rotary Club of Ballard for financial sponsorship of this event, and we thank the National Nordic Museum for making it possible for us to gather as a community in this beautiful hall. Tonight's event is being recorded on the Ballard District Council YouTube channel, and it will be archived there for voters to view. If you'd like to learn more about Ballard District Council, we have some flyers on the table at the rear of the room. And for over 30 years, our civic organization has brought together groups and individuals in the greater Ballard area to learn, listen, and share on a wide range of topics. Our meetings are traditionally the second Wednesday of each month. I'll hand off now to Mike Stewart, who is Executive Director of Ballard Alliance, and he'll provide a few more reminders and introduce our moderator. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Angie. I'm Mike Stewart. I'm Executive Director of the Ballard Alliance. And for those of you who don't know, the Ballard Alliance is an improvement organization that represents hundreds of businesses in the Ballard core and thousands of residents. And we work on several core things: economic development, tourism, marketing and promotions. And then we also work on public policy issues. And we don't take formal positions on elections per se, However, we do like to be a convener of conversations, and we're very thankful to have the two candidates here tonight. This is a very important election. All of these elections matter, and I know that's why you all are here. But I can just tell you, from my perspective, representing business owners, and I see business owners that I know, work with every day, and residents as well, I know that criminal behavior and the criminal justice system have been very strained in the last several years, and that the decisions that you make as voters and the decisions that our city attorney makes, they matter and they're very important. And what we often don't think about is that relationship between this position, city attorney, and the mayor, and the city council, and the King County prosecutor, and the law enforcement agencies as well. And I'm sure our candidates will have some questions about those things and those opinions. So I just wanted to let you know how important it is, and I'm very glad that you all are tuning into it and really listening to these candidates closely tonight, because November definitely matters in a large way. A couple of housekeeping items. Please maintain social distancing, which I think is done for you by positioning in the chairs. The restroom is down the main museum hallway on the left side. We ask for no clapping or interjections, so please hold your applause until the end, or unless guided by the moderator, and then please silence your cell phones. So I'm pleased to introduce our moderator for this evening, Enrique Cerna. As many of you know, Enrique is a veteran journalist who's worked in Seattle media for nearly 45 years, including 23 years at Cascade Public Media's KCTS 9, and retired in February of 2018 from his role as a senior correspondent. Enrique has produced and hosted award-winning current affairs programs and documentaries covering critical topics like social justice and civil rights issues, the environment, immigration, and other important issues. So please join me with a warm round of applause for Enrique.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us this evening. Welcome to the candidates. Thank you for being here. We appreciate it. And let me give a little setup for the evening. This evening, we're pleased to have with us two candidates for the position of Seattle City Attorney. With more than 100 attorneys, the city's law department is one of the largest law offices in Seattle and is the third largest public law office in the state. It consists of a criminal division that prosecutes misdemeanors, gross misdemeanors, and traffic infractions in the Seattle Municipal Court, including misdemeanor assault, misdemeanor domestic violence, misdemeanor theft, trespassing, and DUI. The city attorney's civil division also represents the city in lawsuits and advises city officials as they develop programs, projects, policies, and legislation. For Ballard business owners, property owners, and residents, this is an important election, as Mike noted. In recent years, the city attorney's office has shifted many cases away from traditional prosecution in favor of harm reduction and diversion practices with varying results. People and businesses continue to be victimized by individuals who repeatedly commit crimes, only to be permitted to cycle in and out of the criminal justice system with cascading impacts. So programs and practices are continuing to quickly evolve in concert with budgetary and legislative priorities set by the city council and the mayor. So tonight we're going to hear from the candidates to better understand their positions for this critical leadership role. As you speak, if you do want to take off your mask, I just will let you do that, and if you don't mind putting it back on. Let's start with this. Let's get to know each candidate. I'd like you to please introduce yourself to the Ballard voters. Let us know why you're running to be Seattle City Attorney. You'll have 2 minutes in this opening, so go ahead and it. Huh? Yeah.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us in person, those of you who came, and thanks for watching online. I'm Ann Davison, and I'm running to be your city attorney because I think it's important that we have an impartial, professional attorney running the city attorney's office to see respectable standards, civility restored to our city. It is paramount that we have that role to implement our laws in regarding to public health and public safety. These are crucial parts of our city that are involved, as we're talking about here. Business owners, families, individuals, all sectors of Seattle are talking about safety. It is really an important aspect of daily life, businesses functioning, and people being able to get from point A to point B. And most importantly, we need to reconcile the fact that we've been failing to meet the needs of the most vulnerable in our city, as well as conducting the basic functions of public health and safety. It is a critical time to talk about that. I'm a Seattle mom and an independent thinker. I'm happy to be running for city attorney because I think that I talk in a different way than what we've had in our leadership. It is a way to talk about collaborating. It is a way to be a leader that is being set by example. That regards to our vocabulary, how we speak to one another, how we conduct ourselves in and out of the office. It is an important role as we look to the future of Seattle so that we can have a productive city, one that is full of progress, because we are looking to others to come together to bring about the change that we need in Seattle. When we dehumanize or demonize people, we're not going to get anywhere. And it is important to make sure that we have a professional in that office running things in a way that is impartial, non-partisan, and in the interest of the city of Seattle as a whole. Thank you for your time.
And I failed to mention that we have timers right over here too, so. That's that weird thing you're talking about.
Okay.
There you go.
Hello, everyone. My name is Nicole Kennedy. Thank you for being here. We all want to be safe in our homes, on our streets, in this city that we love. And in pursuit of that, we have poured our money into cops, courts, and jails with ever worse return on our investment. I am the only person sitting on the stage that has worked in Seattle Municipal Court, that has worked in a criminal court, that has worked in a civil court. And I can tell you, as a public defender, what I saw was people cycling in and out of the system with no ability to do anything different. Putting people in jail destabilizes them. I had tons of clients who, if they had jobs or apartments when they went in, they couldn't pay bail and they never had jobs and apartments when they left. And so I really think that we could be doing things a lot better. And that is why I decided to run for city attorney. That's just the criminal side, however. The civil division is twice as big as the criminal division, and Seattle needs a strong advocate. We don't need balance in that office. We have progressive revenue streams that the city council has passed that are constantly under attack. And if we want to see what's happening in our streets stop, we need to cure some of the income inequality, which means that these wealthy companies need to pay their fair share. There's absolutely no reason in this city, one of the wealthiest cities and one of the wealthiest countries on earth, that we have people living in tents outside while we still have billionaires. We can fix this, but we need strong advocacy in the department. Thank you.
All right, I'd like to ask each of you to explain to us why you became an attorney and in more detail, your professional experience, how would you use that to the role that you're hoping to be elected to? And actually, I'm going to start with you first, Nicole. I'll bounce this back and forth, kind of ping pong. Yeah.
So, is that on?
It's on, but it is just, the gremlins are working with us tonight.
So I became an attorney at age 36. I had just had a baby, and I knew that what I wanted for her was to see a strong woman who could do something exciting. And I also had been doing a lot of social justice activism in many recent years, and the things that everybody needed was a lawyer. Everyone always needed a lawyer. And so I went to law school and I became a public defender. The first year I worked out of law school, I did civil commitments. I did over 200 cases. Then I became a criminal attorney in Seattle Municipal Court. I did over 200 cases in Seattle Municipal Court, and then I moved on to District Court and Superior Court. So I have at least 600 cases under my belt. I've done a dozen jury trials. I've never lost a trial, which I think says something about me as an attorney, but also says something about the kind of cases that we are filing in these courts. And so I think I've answered that question, so I'm gonna stop talking.
Okay, that's fine. You don't have to fill the full time. Okay, whatever makes you comfortable.
I also went back to law school as a second career at the age of 33 or 35, I guess it was. So I became a practicing attorney at the age of 38. And I became a lawyer in 2004, so I've been in practice since 2005 for well over 16 years, only in the city of Seattle. And I went to law school because I had a passion from my early 20s to work with refugees. I know that my place personally is to go into the places where people are fleeing, because that is the precise time when our truly most vulnerable are left, because they cannot leave. For me personally, I know that's my space to go into. And so I went to law school to particularly practice immigration law. And I started my own practice out of law school in 2005 in the city of Seattle here. With that, and also because I had a decade of professional sports, I wanted to make sure that I was able to provide legal services to people that I knew in a way that was meaningful, because I was a trusted advisor to some people that it's difficult to find time to get a good rapport with. I've been practicing civil law for that entire time. I'm also an arbitrator. I teach international business law. It is important to know that we have a way of bringing people together, and when you can be a preventative attorney and not have to get to court, that really is the best type of solution. And that is where I practiced predominantly in my career, is on the prevention side, so that you can work with people in a way that is using the law to make sure we are taking care of business.
All right, I'd like each of you to tell us what's the first change that you will bring to office if you're elected, and specifically if you could address toward issues related to here in Ballard, which really happen all over the city, but people were in Ballard. So if you can talk about that, and go ahead.
I know one thing that you've been on the topic here has been the Burke Trail location, so that is something that I'm familiar with, and I know that's important over here in this neighborhood. In regards to what I would do first, it is important to understand that when we're talking about public safety and protection of our neighborhoods, it is important to look at what is the high impact that is taking place in our city, and where can we make the most difference in the first few days. It is really important to understand people communicate in the form of a crime, and it is our personal and social responsibility to understand that. Absolutely. But the role of the city attorney is also to center the victims of crime and to make sure that we don't have an increase of those victims just because we're not making sure we are holding the societal limit of our laws. There's a way to do it with compassion, with meaningful intervention with people, and we can do that with some of our diversion programs and some of our alternative methods. But we do need to make sure there's accountability there, so that you are not having that in your neighborhood. You're not having a time where we are seeing people that are not getting help, when we are not using the resources that we do have in an adequate way to intervene with someone, instead of having the intervention be possibly for them even death. Again, I worked in a refugee camp on the border of Cambodia where people were fleeing civil war, and it was more humane and hygienic in that camp than what we have left people to subsist alongside the roadways of Seattle. There needs to be social response. Not all of it is going to be in the city attorney's office. Some other people need to step up in ways they need to as well.
Thank you, Nicole.
So I think that one of the most important things that I could do on day one is really reorganize the criminal division of the office. So I know that there has been a lot of talk about limits and things of that nature, but what we're talking about primarily in that office is crimes of poverty. So 90% of the people that are prosecuted in that court qualify for a public defender. So they're either right on the edge of subsistence or they're already over the edge. The problem with prosecuting people in poverty, not just for the people in poverty, but is the destabilizing nature of what happens when you prosecute people. I think we need to turn away from this method, especially when it comes to poverty, because there's nothing about prosecuting someone for stealing a sandwich that makes them less hungry. And I really don't think that we need to be expecting people to starve in gentility. That is a huge part of what is in that court. And I think that that needs to go first, and we really need to start looking at how we are going to meet people's needs. Because what we're talking about is poverty, mental health, and addiction, and people need help for those, not just some temporary stay in jail and then they get out. And then the second thing I would do is reorganize the domestic violence side of the office to be survivor-centered, meaning that we focus on what do survivors need to stay safe in the long term, not just what's going to keep them in safe while an abuser is in jail, because the maximum term is less than a year. So we really need to be focusing on what's going to make them safe in the long term and empowering them.
I want to ask each of you to weigh in about accountability, and particularly the issue of accountability when it comes to dealing with homelessness, dealing with property damage, these types of things. We have many people that are concerned about, this today in all of our neighborhoods. But tell me, where is the accountability from your office and accountability on those people that might be committing these either property crimes or even just concerns for people in their neighborhood? So let's start with you first. I'll give you 90 seconds. Go ahead.
So usually when people are committing property damage, it's generally related to addiction or mental health. It's not on.
Yeah, it will come up.
It is.
Yeah.
So it's.
Now it's on?
There.
Okay, so a lot of times.
We just
when-
want to make the night interesting for you. So
Yeah, no, I like it. So generally when we're talking about property damage, like property damage or theft, it's usually poverty, addiction, mental health issues. And so it really depends on which of those things is driving those things. So for when it comes to issues of poverty, I've had a lot of clients actually that want to take responsibility right away, that they'll tell me like, that's fine, I did it, like let's just get it over with, let's just say it. And there's really no method for doing that in the criminal system. Even if someone wants to plead guilty, we have to wait. I have to get an offer, a negotiated offer, and then they're only allowed to say certain things in front of the judge. And punishment and accountability aren't really the same. So what I would like to see is, one, we address what the actual need is, whether it's addiction or disability, but then also finding ways of making restorative justice happen. So when people want to take accountability, they can. I also will have a victims compensation fund in the office for people and small businesses who've been harmed by people who can't pay restitution. They can get restoration from the city.
When Fred Meyer had over $2 million stolen just in 2018 alone, and we look at who we are as a city, and we are a compassionate city. We aren't people who want to criminalize someone for being poor. That's the opposite of what Seattleites want and who they are, as far as I'm concerned. But when we have people that want to take advantage of situations and do bad acts, and you want to divorce accountability, and you want to have taxpayers then pay for the wrong that was done, is concerning to me, because I think that we're separating out a part of human nature that really should not be. None of us are more the better individual if we separate from ourselves consequences from our actions. And when I say consequences, that doesn't mean jail. I'm just saying, as a human, it really separates us out from our collective being together. And when we want someone to become their better future self, accountability is part of that aspect. And so there is not going to be a place for someone to say, we would want to prosecute you because you are in need. That's not who we are. That's not who I am. But we do need to have accountability, and that means something. That means that we don't just let people do harm to one another. Again, our laws are a reflection of our values of society, and they have to mean something, and that means they mean something to all of us.
Thank you. A couple of questions here that I'm going to be specific to each candidate, and this is going to be for you, Ann. So last year you ran for lieutenant governor as a Republican, recognizing that the Seattle City Attorney position is nonpartisan. Voters in Seattle still pay close attention to partisanship. So what would you say to Seattle voters who are concerned about a Republican, or former Republican, assuming the role of Seattle City Attorney?
You didn't tell us it was your mic also that does the two delay. I thought it was just the two up here. I'm really humbled and proud to be endorsed by former governors Gary Locke and Gregoire. I think it's important to look that they have played a part in this municipal race because it is a nonpartisan race. It is a place, again, to provide impartial legal advice to those elected to create policy for our city. It is not a place for activism. It is not the place for contempt for others who might think differently. It is a place where we must maintain standards of respect, civility, and professionalism. Both of those former governors are also attorneys. It's really important to me that we have a reflection of our city that is in regards to our laws, what we pass. That has nothing to do with me. That is legislative. I want to make sure that we run the office in the way that is intended to do, which is to give impartial legal advice to those elected to create policy. And you do that by creating a sense of trust and an attorney-client relationship. And I think that is the important aspect that they see that I would be able to provide, and that is really the most important.
All right, Nicole, over the past year, you've posted numerous tweets that have raised some controversy, and a couple of them, I have a list here, but I'm not going to read them all because it would take too long. But I'm going to pick out a couple here. July 15th of last year, you tweeted, "This person is a hero," in response to a Seattle police report that someone threw a device that blew an 8-inch hole in a precinct building. Then last September, when a police officer's car was set on fire in a South Lake Union alley by a man brandishing a large flaming piece of lumber, you tweeted, "Cops are so dumb. Put up your window, pig." So, having said that, how do you reconcile, having made those statements, inflammatory, with having the ability to effectively hold what is considered to be the most important criminal justice job in the city? So how do voters really know who the real NTK is?
So first of all, a little bit of context for what was happening around that time. I live in Capitol Hill. There was the Western barricade near the Eastern Precinct was there. There was a lot of protests going on, but for 11 nights in a row, I got tear gas in my house from the protests, from police. I have a 9-year-old daughter. I had to buy her a gas mask for her to wear inside our home. I had several friends who had bruises the size of dinner plates all over their bodies from rubber bullets, from standing out there and protesting. There was a lot of things going on, and I was sickened by what I was seeing. And so I was angry. I was very angry at that time, and I didn't use words that I would use as a city attorney, that's for sure. I've never run for an office before. I had no political aspirations at that time. And the prevailing tone on Twitter is snark and sarcasm, and I defend the right of anyone to use that tone on Twitter. However, now that I'm running for city attorney, I realize that that is inappropriate, and I have stopped tweeting in that way. But I think what we need when it comes to police is not more deference. Police need accountability. A federal judge, a superior court judge, the chief, the city council tried to stop what was happening last year, and police would not stop. We need someone who's going to hold police accountable.
Let me follow up on a couple of things here. As Ann mentioned, she was endorsed by former governors Gregoire and Gary Locke as well, and they're prominent Democrats. I'd just like to get your reaction to that, and how did you feel about that when you had to be your Democrat?
Socialist.
Well, no comments in the audience.
Let's just be clear.
No comments in the audience, please go ahead.
Socialist.
Please stop. If you can't do that, you need to leave. So please, let's just be civil. Go ahead.
So I honestly wasn't terribly surprised. I mean, Christine Gregoire, she endorsed Scott Lindsay over Pete Holmes. She is also the head of Challenge Seattle, which is.
Your mic is done.
Yeah, we're having no trouble here.
Okay.
Kiss the mic.
You want to try it? Sorry.
Yeah. So former Governor Gregoire is also the head of Challenge Seattle, which is a group of the 21 biggest corporations in the area that are all going to be affected by the Jumpstart tax. So given that, and given that she had endorsed Scott Lindsay, who's a conservative, for city attorney over Pete Holmes, I was actually not that surprised. But also, we're talking about retired governors. These are the same people that oversaw the implementation of mass incarceration And I understand that getting away from that idea might be a bit scary, but I think what we really need to do, and every Democratic organization in the city agrees with me, is move forward. We cannot go backwards with our policies.
You could get right back down. I mean, follow up just a 30-minute disbalance. Is that, I guess one question that people might have is that if you're still a Republican, I don't know if you are or not, what kind of Republican are you?
The only Republican I would want to be likened to is former Governor Dan Evans, who also endorsed me. And really, it really is about the city and people and issues. It's not about going backwards. And it certainly is about progress that is also productive. And it should be noted that if we were to look at our state, we are about even with New Zealand in regards to incarceration rates. We are not like the rest of the country. So we are a different place. And I think, again, when you look at the city and you want to discount people's opinions for whatever reason, everyone's reality is valid and everyone should be listened to. And when you're looking at the societal problems in our city and you see that things aren't working, you can either complain, you can be angry, you can be nasty, you can add to the hate, or you can actually say, I'm going to try to make a difference in the biggest positive way I can. My kids are 10 and 12. They don't have a memory of Seattle but for its current conditions. It is past time for us to get on to business here in the city of Seattle so that we can do things for the most vulnerable, so that we can be productive, so that we can put things behind us in the past, so that we can get past angry, hateful language. We've just gotten out from underneath that. We don't need any more of it. It is time to be positive and hopeful for the future of Seattle.
All right, on the next question, I'd like to give you, I'd like you to respond with a yes or a no, and then if you want to take a minute from there to elaborate, I'll let you do that. And I think we can just share the mic at this point, since we never know if the audience is going to show up on that. All right, do you support, and I'll start with Ann here, do you support abolishing the Seattle Police Department? Yes or no, and then I'll give you another minute to elaborate if you want.
No.
I do, but what abolition means is it's not overnight. Abolition is a gradual process of building up community-based support and services so we don't need police, prisons, and prosecutors for everything. I do not in any way support waking up tomorrow with no police. I think we need to gradually divest from police every year, just bring the budget down, start spending more money in community where it belongs. And then we will see crime going down as that happens. You know, the US incarcerates at a rate that no other country does. And it doesn't matter what state to state is. If you go into federal prison or DOC, you can get sent to any state. And my opponent doesn't understand that. So that might be why it seems like our incarceration rate is low here, but it's not the reality of what's happening. We have taken mass incarceration as far as we can. We really need to start reeling it back, but it's a gradual process.
Do you want to elaborate any more here? Give you a minute.
When I answered that, it is also with accountability. We need better police. It doesn't mean we need fewer. If we're asking people to make these decisions, to be there. When I listen to African-American leaders in our city, they say, we want to be able to have safety. We need to be able to call and have police come because some of our neighborhoods are the most impacted by crime. I am endorsed by reform leaders. They want police, they want them to be better. And that means we have work to do, and it means the conversation continues. But it does not mean that we do away with them completely. It means that we continue that work, we continue to listen, and we continue to evolve as a city and as a people. And we do that when we include voices that might sound different than ours so that we can have the best approach and we have all those perspectives together.
All right, collaboration. As part of the city's law enforcement team, you'll be required to work with Seattle Police Command staff and other public safety personnel, as well as complex collaboration with the court system, criminal justice entities, and other jurisdictions. So describe your relationships with key stakeholders. What's your track record or style of leadership and collaboration? We'll start with Nicole.
So my style of leadership is very open. I like a collaborative team at all times, but I also like the door open for feedback, because I think what we really need is to have a leader that can constantly take criticism and take it well and be improving. And I think that there needs to be conflicting opinions in the room. And so in terms of the stakeholders, I know the court very well. Like I said, I've done over 600 cases, so I'm very familiar with the court system. Obviously, my relationship with SVD is going to be somewhat strained in the beginning, but just as a reminder, they don't like peep homes either. So there's also there's a very vocal contingent in Seattle Police Department, but then there's also, I know a lot of officers that don't like the direction that things are going, but feel afraid to speak out. And so there is going to, things are going to need to be reorganized, but we're not going to do that by, just having conversations. We really need to change directions, and that's what I intend to do.
That word is basically my favorite word, is collaboration. It really is an art form to really listen to people and invite them to be part of that change. And it is a way to lead. It is not just language. There is a definite way to do that by example. And it includes saying, where are my blind spots? Tell me where I can do something better. And that is making sure everyone has a sense of ownership in the solution. And that is really the way to lead. I've had phone calls with King County Prosecutor Dan Satterberg. I talk with leaders around our jurisdiction. I'm endorsed by retired judges. I do know my way around. And it is important to understand the way you get things done is a different way that you act in a professional manner in regards to being a lawyer. And I think that it is critical and paramount as we're talking about safety, because crime does not stay within one jurisdictional authority. It crosses departments, it crosses agencies, and it crosses jurisdictions. There are ways to improve our safety that we have together. It is the linking together of different departments and agencies. That is what we call all collectively together public safety. It's time to make sure that we have it in a true collaborative way so that we can move forward.
Ballard is not known as a place where people get in trouble for stealing a sandwich or a pair of socks, but we do have significant issues with high rates of drug-related shoplifting, assaults, harassment, and property damage. If elected city attorney, which misdemeanor crimes would you choose not to prosecute? So,
I think it's important to not categorically do anything because that's not going to be the way forward. I want to focus things on that are called high impact. It is a way to look at an analysis of what we can do with our resources that we have. So that is going to not necessarily be a one phrase or a catch-all of something that I'm going to say. It's going to be a way to review what is coming across, the charges that are coming over, and how can we best use the resources that we have within the criminal division to adequately address those needs. Again, we're going to be looking at the victim of the crime, public safety, and definitely, why is that person communicating in the form of a crime? It is our duty, personally and socially, to understand that. I have spent my personal time in that sector. That is really, to me, the most important part. I spent a lot of time in my 20s and in my 30s and 40s doing outreach. It is important to understand that. And if you're not taking part in that, we need to have all of us do it. But it does mean that we balance those things. And it is a way that is going to be different than what we've had, because the conversation is going to be one that is celebrating people's recovery, making sure we are giving people help, and making sure that our neighborhoods have safety.
cool.
So there's only a few things I categorically would not prosecute, and those things would be what we call a no-vol, which is no voluntary operator's license on person, meaning you're driving without your driver's license on. It's actually a simple misdemeanor. I would not prosecute that because it's a waste of taxpayer dollars. I would also not prosecute misdemeanor drug possession or prostitution because, again, they are a complete waste of taxpayer dollars. I have said many times that I will stop prosecuting poverty, so I will stop prosecuting those misdemeanors that are sleeping under an awning or stealing a sandwich. But there are other cases. I've said, for instance, when it comes to crimes of interpersonal violence, prosecution has to remain an option. I'm not taking that off the table. I think there is a huge misunderstanding, though, about what is actually a misdemeanor. I had never heard my opponent say the facts of a misdemeanor, always a felony. There's a lot of things that make a crime a felony, and it's a very complicated process, but repeat shoplifting is generally a felony. If you shoplift and push someone on the way out the door, that's a felony. Stealing to fence is a felony. There's just a lot of things that make something a felony. So when I'm talking about I'm going to stop prosecuting poverty, I really do mean those low-level cases, and that makes up a good 30% of what's in that court. But everything else needs to be, except for the 3 things I mentioned, needs to be a case-by-case basis, because no matter what crime you say, there's always some weird fact pattern out there that you haven't thought of yet that will pop up.
In the past few years, it's become far more common to see armed guards at Ballard grocery stores. Additionally, many residents and business owners are finding it necessary to invest significant resources to protect from theft and repetitive property damage. So what role would you play as a city attorney in creating neighborhood environments where private security and boarded up windows are not a norm? Let's start with you, Nicole.
Well, first I would say that big corporations and big companies have always had guards. They just weren't always so noticeable, but most big companies have loss prevention officers. They've had them since the 80s. I do know that there is a difference now with what's going on, but what we're seeing is the result of really intense income inequality. I think what we need to be doing is we need to be serving the community better. We need to be making sure that people can get their mental health needs and their food needs and all of those needs met. And I think that there is an impression out there that if you have a mental health disorder, or if you do struggle with addiction, if you want to get help, you can, and that is not the reality. Community mental health is extremely under-resourced. If you don't go in crisis, you're not going to get in for several months, and if people are living on the street, they can't keep up their medication regimen, they lose their medication. We really need to be focused on housing and meeting basic needs. That's what's going to reduce that. We simply can't lock everybody up. Even if we wanted to lock up every single person that's sleeping outside right now, we don't have enough beds in the King County Jail by about 5 times over. That's not going to be the solution. We need to be looking at solutions that are based in reality. And what we are seeing is people who need care, and that's what we need to be spending our money on. Because currently we spend over $70 million a year just prosecuting misdemeanors. That doesn't even count for police. That's just prosecuting misdemeanors. And we could be doing that a lot better.
Most of, when we're talking about why someone's communicating a form of a crime, most of those solutions are going to be legislative actions that our council and mayor need to address in budgetary items. It's important that energy and time and attention is focused on those things, but the city attorney's role, again, is to be there for that societal limit, which is reflected in our laws. Again, we are a place of compassion. It does not mean that everyone goes to jail. It means that we use the resources that we have in the city attorney's office to provide a balanced approach so that public safety is improved, so that people are getting the needs that we can provide through that office, and that victims of crime are not incurring more and more and more. I don't see why we would want to put even more onus on a small business owner to have to provide their own security because, again, government is not providing its basic role of public health and safety. That is part of the important aspect of running a city government. This is what we need to do so that it's not put upon small business owners, neighborhood businesses, people who are trying to just get by. Misdemeanors do matter. And I do know the difference of what they are. Misdemeanors matter because some are serious offenses, some are committed, and they are by frequent, repetitive people who want to engage in criminal activity. And sometimes misdemeanors can be business ending, job ending, and tax revenue ending.
Thank you. All right. Gun violence and homicides have risen significantly in Seattle this year. Local rates of gun ownership are also greatly increasing. So what kind of prosecutorial strategies would you implement to reduce gun violence in our city? Let's start with you.
This has been a serious year that we've had in regards to gun violence. I was just out at Judkins Park this past Saturday before I coached my daughter's soccer team, and they had gunfire out there last Saturday in the middle of the day while there's youth football going on. It is happening in every sector of our city. This is not what we want. None of us want that in any neighborhood, and we should all have a sense of safety and protection. Some of the misdemeanors that we're talking about are things we can intervene in. Unlawful discharge of a firearm. There are multiple gun offenses that are at the misdemeanor level where we can intervene and make sure that those do not increase in severity and frequency, where people have guns that we are not tending to that. It is a significant thing for us to intervene. Otherwise, we are inviting that. We are inviting at the felony level. I'm talking about misdemeanors because this is where we can intervene. It is the first point at which we can intervene in someone's life. And if we don't, then they will likely think that that is the message that they have to accept. And we do not want that for that individual, and we don't want that for our neighborhoods. We do not want them to increase in severity and frequency so that they are at the felony level. It is at the misdemeanor level. We can intervene with some of the gun violence and make sure that our city is safe.
So first, I'd just like to say unlawful discharge of a weapon is a misdemeanor, and it is so rare because almost every time a gun is fired, it is a felony. It's a very complicated process and analysis that's involved. But usually if someone shoots a gun, it's a felony. Rarely, it's like an accidental, I won't go into it, but it's generally a felony. I think what we really need to be talking about is it's not all the same communities. It's not all communities that are experiencing gun violence. The healthiest communities that are resourced, that have after-school programs, that have things for kids to do, that where people have good jobs, where parents can be at home more often, those are the communities that don't have gun violence. It's not over-policed communities that are the safest. It's the healthiest communities that are the safest. And a lot of these neighborhoods, including the Central District, have been telling us for years and years what they need in order to be safe. It's healthcare, it's mental health help, it's after-school programs, it's sourced schools, and that's what works in every other country in the world. We are the only country that does this, and we are by far not the safest. We are actually in the bottom half of safety. So if we want to get serious about safety, we need to ratchet down the fear, because that's also what drove people to buy guns en masse last year. We need to ratchet down the fear, and we need to ratchet up the care for each other, and really paying attention to what people actually need, because that's what's going to create safety, healthy communities.
The LEAD diversion program was implemented in Ballard in 2015, but hasn't had a visible or measurable impact on community safety. Seattle Municipal Court also operates alternative approaches like community court and mental health court. Which approaches offer the most transparency and accountability in local communities, and how would you measure efficacy? Let's start with you. The mic. Okay.
So I think, when LEAD first started out, it did have much better success numbers. And the reason for that was usually if someone got into LEAD, they got housing. And that's really the problem that we're seeing right now is people get into LEAD, they have case managers, there's simply no housing available. And there's really not that much you can do. If someone's living on the street and they have a substance use disorder or they have a mental health disorder, usually it's both, there's only so much you can do, And so, I would like to see a housing first model, but if you're asking me about LEAD and community court and...
Really, how community court is working, mental health court, which ones do you think are offering the most transparency and accountability?
Sure. So community courts kind of started right when the pandemic started, so it's really hard to evaluate the efficacy of that court. I think with mental health court, personally, I don't see it as being that effective because what we're talking about is people who are voluntarily entering services anyway. And so if we're already having people that are voluntarily entering into services, why do we need a judge and some lawyers to oversee it? That's the most expensive part. Why not spend that money expanding those services so more people can access them when they need to?
Again, a lot of these questions are budgetary questions, so they would be outside of the purview of the city attorney. So it's really important to understand the role that we would have. We can be influential and would ask, but some of the budgetary items that we're talking about are separate. It's important to see accountability and to have that transparency. I think that there are some aspects of our diversion programs and in our mental health court where we can enhance that. We can have it be more of a behavioral health court, similar to things we have at the county level, where we are able to really adequately address people's needs and understand what is happening. Again, I talk about personal and social responsibility that we must have in that aspect. And I put that on myself. The accountability part of that means I need to make sure that the office is transparent so that we as the general public understand what is happening in that office. What is it that you're doing with that money that we've entrusted to you? Because what your role is, you are the only one to do that for us in the city of Seattle in regards to misdemeanor prosecution. You are the only one to advise on that. You're the only one to set the tone and direction of the office in regards to how we set that up. And to make sure that it is a way that is transparent for us to understand, as I think it's not been understood for a lot of us on the outside.
How do you expect the King County Regional Homelessness Authority to affect the work of the city attorney's office? And you first.
It is going to be a critical juncture to make sure that that has a good overlap. I've been finding gaps in my conversations with people that really are inexplicable as to why there are gaps. And so again, staying in my lane as city attorney, I do not need to go into areas that are outside the purview of what I would be authorized to do. It's really important to understand that distinction because I would be advising the city as their lawyer. And so there are ways in which we can have implementation and procedure that is in place so we are not leaving people without help. There are gaps that I've identified that I'm wanting to work on, but I think that it's, for now, I don't really want to go into it because I want to see, I don't want to go outside my lane. It really is important to me. Homelessness is a huge issue, and it's a significant issue for me. I participated in that King County point time in the middle of the night in 2021. We got to the 11,751. I know how we got there. We went out and we counted from 2 a.m. to 4 a.m. So it is a very near and dear part to my heart, and I go and currently do outreach now. So I personally take that responsibility, and I would professionally take that responsibility.
Okay, so the city attorney has a huge role in how we're going to address homelessness. First of all, the civil division of the city attorney's office is twice as large as the criminal division. And there is, all the contracts for the city come through the city attorney's office. Land use codes, which I know are something that the city council is looking to change, that legislation will need to be crafted along with the city attorney's office in order for it to be legally defensible. The city attorney doesn't really give legal advice to the mayor and city council. They have their own counsel. The city attorney helps the mayor and city council craft legislation, and they defend the city in all lawsuits. There is a role, I think, for the city attorney. I would love to give up some of the budget that we currently use prosecuting poverty to the Human Services Department so it can be used in collaboration with the King County Homelessness Outreach Program. Because really, when we're talking about the number one problem we have in the city right now is we have too many unsheltered people outside, and we really can't be sitting on the sidelines saying we need to stay in our lane. The city attorney's office is also an elected position. We're not appointed by the mayor. We're not beholden. We're beholden to the city charter. And that means we are to do what it takes to keep this city safe and healthy. And whether it's on the criminal division or the civil division, the city attorney has the ability to do and enact things with the budget that are going to result in the health and safety for all.
All right, so I'm going to give both of you a chance to give a closing statement. So I'm going to give 2 minutes to each of you. And Ann, we'll start with you first, and then we'll have Nicole wrap it up. Yeah. I know, that's why I thought, well, depending on who wants to go last, I just figured usually the person that goes first. if the person wants to go last. Does it matter?
No,
Let's flip a coin. How's that?
no, we're good. We had gone to flip flop, but I thought we were still doing the way you had. I appreciate your time tonight. It is an evening, and so you've taken your time away from family and personal items that you needed to tend to listen to us. So I do appreciate your time. We all have time, talent, and treasure to offer our city. We all have a voice, and we all have a valid perspective in what we've experienced in our city. It really is important to understand that when I'm talking about running for city attorney, it is a way to bring meaningful, positive impact for our city. I'm here because I have been living here for 25 years, and it really has brought me to politics because of the state of our city. In regards to homelessness, that is exactly why I'm here. As I mentioned before, when I had to come to terms with that the refugee camp I had worked in was more humane than what we have left people to subsist alongside our roadways. I am someone who is looking for balance and looking for the way that we approach social issues in a way that is going to be meaningful for individuals, in addition to us collectively. I am not an activist ideologue. I am an independent thinker and Seattle mom. And when we're talking about being an attorney, I've been practicing for over 16 years. I do understand what the role is. I do understand exactly what we need to do. It is a way to lead with collaboration. It is a way to bring in different voices. It is a way to represent the values that we have in our laws in a way that is meaningful for us. I appreciate your time listening, and I would appreciate your support. I am endorsed, like I said, from Governors Gregoire and Locke, Seattle Times, Seattle Building Trades, over a dozen retired judges, numerous professional attorneys. It is really important to see the city attorney's office be a place where we are giving legal advice and we are looking for safety within the city, and we can do it in a compassionate way with reform and providing protection for all of our neighborhoods. Thank you.
Thank you all for being here. I decided to run for this office because I saw firsthand the way that we were doing it wrong. We need to stop and turn to a different way of doing things. We need to make progress. We cannot go back to the same lock 'em up type attitude that we had before. It simply won't solve our problems. We need to face our problems. Our problems are poverty, addiction, and mental health issues, and we need to address those. That is what's going to move us forward as a city. I'm raising a daughter here as well. I don't want her to grow up in the city looking like this. We don't have to live this way, but we need to start prioritizing the most vulnerable, because if we don't, the costs are externalized to all of us. And so, but we need to have solutions that are rooted in reality. We need to have solutions that aren't just based on an idea of punishment that isn't serving us anymore. We need to be using our money in a way that actually furthers our interests. And right now, it costs about $10,000 to prosecute someone for a misdemeanor. It's $200 a night for the jail. You know, permanent housing with wraparound services costs $25,000 a year. That's a much better use of our money, you know, because in the jail it's $73,000 a year. For a third of our money, we could be getting a lot more safety and we could be getting a lot more for our money, but it is going to require us to turn away from a consequence-based model and start meeting people where they are. You know, we can't keep punishing people for personal failures when they're really systemic problems that have been left to us by leaders of the past. I'm endorsed by every Democrat organization, Council Member Germay Zahalai, Rebecca Saldana, Kirsten Harris-Talley, Council Members Teresa Mosqueda and Tammy Morales, and I look forward to working with the council and actually solving Seattle's problems. Thank you.
All right, we give a round of applause to the candidates. Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for joining us this evening, and stay safe.